you.
Oh, thank you. Everybody should say hi to Becky.
Hi,
Hi,
Becky.
Becky. Hi, Becky.
Small town, right? All right, good evening. It is 6 p.m. and I call this meeting to order of the Downtown Management Board for Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. Good evening. I want to welcome a new member, Chris Jacquinette from Threads and Après. Thank you for joining us, Chris, in this fun endeavor. I do have a point of clarification. Is she starting officially in January or is she officially a member of the board today and has voting rights?
She's officially today.
Thank you very much. All right, lovely. So please ask questions. Yeah, okay. So we will start with the consent agenda. You'll see on the back of the agenda is what is included in the consent agenda. Obviously includes the meeting minutes from our last meeting, as well as expenditures, the November check register, and acceptance of November revenue and expense statements for the parking fund and programs and services fund.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Thank you, Mr. Keaty and Mr. Smith. Do we have any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, I will take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for being prepared and having read that before you got here. I see, Amy, thank you for putting in here our listing of upcoming dates, so everybody can put them in their calendars. We will open this up to public comment. Anyone?
Becky,
Becky?
You know, she's just smiling at home.
just
Her glass of wine.
ghosting us.
All right, well, hearing none, we will move on under new business. So adoption of the 2025 DMB meeting schedule. So again, that's at the end after the consent agenda. So third Tuesday of each month, and we have an additional meeting in here, which is Wednesday, January 15th, which will be a joint meeting with City Council.
I make a motion to adopt the 2025 meeting schedule as it is written.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett.
I will second.
Thank you, Ms. Brannig. How are you? All right. Any questions? All those in favor of approving the meeting schedule, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Reports by Downtown Management Board committees and staff. Amy, will you please start us off?
Sure, and we flipped the agenda just because usually this comes at the end, but we thought we'd flip it so that all the discussion of guidelines and ordinance can happen after. So on the committees, the design committee did not meet this month. The organizational task force did not meet this month, and we have yet to get all the members for the economic enhancement committee. However, other things that I just wanted to update you on. Did send out an email on January 21st. Just want to make sure we have at least a quorum for that, because that would be our joint Downtown Development Authority meeting as well, that needs to be posted. So
could everybody check their schedule then for January 15th?
25th, or 21st, sorry, 21st is our regular meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
That's when you're not at.
I am not here. No. Going to Puerto Rico.
So that will also be election of officers.
Everyone else is able to be here. Fabulous. Looks
Okay.
like you have a quorum.
Okay.
Thank you.
I last month mentioned the Match on Main grant that will be opening first of the year. Sent out to downtown information on that, and I have 4 businesses already that are interested. I've asked them to get me kind of a summary of what they are thinking they want to apply for. And then I'm going to have the Economic Enhancement Committee kind of look at those and decide which would be our strongest candidate. The city can submit up to two. I don't know that both of those will be downtown businesses. I know Manager Horn has also been talking to businesses. But at least one of those would likely be an application for a downtown business. And then we are also, I should say Shane and I are looking at a grant, an energy management grant to make upgrades to do an energy audit and some window replacements at the Carnegie Building, which is within downtown. It needs probably more than a few windows, but this grant would probably only allow us to do a few, and then we're hoping to, once the energy audit is done through this same program, then we may be able to apply again to do additional windows. So that could be a grant up to $100,000. And it looks pretty positive that we would be able to do that. So that is all I have as updates, and I know Andy has been extremely busy with events, so I will turn it over to her.
Yes. Okay, so we have had holiday open house, we had the parade last week, and then on Friday we have our men's night. But first, the marketing and promotions committee met on a different day this month because I was gonna be out of town. So I appreciate that. We met, and the minutes are in the packet. Please let me know if you have any questions. One thing we're kind of focusing on with the marketing and promotions committee is really including them in the budget planning and, you know, what we want to do with the money that we have available for us. You'll see that we reviewed our strategic plan with the committee, our portions that were, pertain to us. And then that was meant to keep those things in mind as we start talking about our budget and kind of reviewing what we want to, where we want to put our emphasis on. So you'll see that they reviewed the calendar project and ultimately made the decision to not continue that project and instead use those funds for other marketing initiatives. We are going to continue the budget discussion in January as well. And then so holiday open house was the beginning of the month. It was extremely cold, but you were inside, we were outside, but it was very cold. But overall it was always a great event. But I'm curious, I was out of town last week and we had our parade, and this was the first the parade date with the time change and date change. So I was just kind of wondering if anyone had any super good feedback from it. I was gonna survey the downtown and just kind of see what that was. The date, time change, and date change was ultimately made on a lot of different factors. Volunteer commitment and participation, parade commitment and participation. We were thinking that the daytime parade would be ultimately a little bit better for stores. So those were kind of all taken into consideration with the change. So I'm just curious if anyone had any great experience or no, or did you prefer a night parade or a daytime parade or anything like that? Don't all jump at once, but
We had a really good day that day, so
Okay.
I can say that. I personally felt like the nighttime parade is nicer. I just think the floats are more fun. That's
Mhm.
my own personal opinion. I know as a store, most of my staff was happy to have it be during the day.
Mhm.
I did not, we had a great day, so I'm prefacing it by that I don't know how busy it was on Mitchell Street at all,
Mhm.
but there was not a lot of people on Lake Street.
Okay, that's what Amy had said too.
I feel like some of that has more to do with when this happens in all the parades and as they come around the corner and like, I mean, I didn't time it, but it felt like 10 minutes, but it was probably a good 5 to 7 minute wait between different
Mhm.
things. And I feel like people are like, oh, is that it? That's it. I'm like, no, it's not it. Every year I feel like I'm saying that. I don't know if there's something we can do to solve some of that or if we need to change the route, but I feel like we're
It's just a
missing.
big lag.
There's a big, and maybe it was
everyone was loving the Kilwins chocolate, but that was one of the ones that was having a tough time turning. And I feel like maybe we need to set some parameters on how big things can be,
Mhm.
or I don't know. That was just my, those are strictly personal opinions, but it was a great day, sales day, and people were excited.
Good. Was one of the people that I worked with on planning the parade. He did say the same thing about the lag. He said, he said there were just people that were just taking their own, willy-nilly time and not really aware of it. So that was noted too.
And I think, by the time things got to our corner, we had a very, very busy day from the moment we opened. So I didn't actually get outside to watch the parade, but twice I thought the parade was over.
Okay.
And literally, like, I walked outside and everybody was walking away and I was like, oh, Santa must have already gone by. Nope.
Okay.
Santa was like 15 minutes later. Now, mind you, like, we allowed Santa to walk. Santa should have been riding.
Yeah.
The Killen semi truck is too long. So it struggles, and then too many other groups are walking. I think you're right about putting parameters on things in terms of like, okay, you have to ride, you have to, certain things. And then having parade marshals that are saying, nope, speed it up, move along.
Yeah, I think people along the parade route, because it is really long from Hill Street down to the gazebo, so.
There might be something also with, sometimes when the kids are walking, like there was some parents walking and they were just like dragging their little one. I'm like, okay, you need to have something for when they don't want to walk.
Yeah.
Because the car was keeping pace with them instead of
the parade.
And so I do feel like there's some things that we can solve in that way. As far as the date, I feel like it was nice to have another thing, but I don't know enough on how busy it was for if it was as busy as everybody else's.
Okay.
I was not in town either, but Eileen, who works for me, commented that they had a lot of people say they liked the nighttime better just because of the lights.
Yeah.
It was just prettier and more
festive
Yep.
than seeing just a
Mhm.
beat up truck. It's always more attractive when they're in lights,
That was.
And then, okay, cool, thank you. And then our last kind of event that we have, at least for this year, is our men's night out on Friday. And this is a newer event, obviously that, we adopted and we took over. We've had a very enthusiastic committee that has honestly probably been meeting, if not weekly, every 2 weeks to help plan this. So that's on Friday. I have about, I think, 39 total stores signed up, which is really great. I am meeting with the committee tomorrow morning, but I will just share that there's one business that wanted me to express their frustration with the street closures. So just keep in mind that we are closing Howard and Lake Street to put 3 DJs in the street. Simon's was not very on board with that, and they just wanted me to express their frustrations with that as the third week in a row that we're closing the streets. It really affects a lot, and they just wanted, so I'm doing my due diligence and I informed the committee, but I also just wanted to let you guys know that as well. They are participating in the event, but future participation will be based on how the event is this week and then street closures going forward. I will say that the street closures, we are having 3 DJs set up in the streets. But I did talk with the DJ today, and I am, and like I said, I'm meeting with the committee tomorrow, but the DJ is not able to play outside unless the tents maintain 50 degrees inside the tent. So we have 3 10 by 10 pop-up tents with 3 sides and a heater for each tent. I am very concerned that the tent will not stay 50 degrees for the computer equipment. So I am very worried about that. But the backup plan is placing these 3 DJs in a store somewhere in 3 different stores, which I think we have a backup, we can make it work. But I am very concerned that it's going to be 25 degrees and I don't see it be very realistic to maintain 50 degrees in a 3-sided tent when it's 25 degrees out, especially going from 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night. So I am very worried about that. But then it also leads me into, okay, if we do a backup plan of putting the DJs into stores, there's nothing in the streets. So my thought track is if they cannot be in the streets, then we don't close the streets for the event. Mind you, I will talk about this with the committee, but that's my recommendation for the committee. If he cannot perform in the tents, I think it's going to reflect very poorly if the DJs are in stores and then someone has to park far away, and then you get down and you say, oh my gosh, there's nothing in the streets. So we will talk about that tomorrow morning. But like I said, I'm very cautious of that. And that would be my recommendation going forward. I also don't want to exhaust a lot of city resources and stuff like that by closing these little chunks of street. I know that I also don't want to alienate people that aren't big fans of the street closure anyway for the third time in a row. And then if there's nothing in the streets. So just kind of wanted to make you all aware of that in the life of our event planning. So we will see what the committee says. I also would like to know if there's any strong feelings with that said that I can relate back to the committee.
I have a strong opinion. I think that that's a very wise decision, Andy, and I think that I would definitely encourage the committee to really think heavily about that in terms of like, because we have many other successful events without closing the streets. Ladies' night out, we only started closing for trick or treating 2 years ago, right? Like witches' night out, we didn't close the streets and we had hundreds of witches downtown. So I think that we could probably get away without closing the streets. And I don't know what the temperatures are going to be like on Friday. Obviously, we could look and extrapolate, but
yeah.
I think that we are better off to make that decision to not close the streets and put DJs in stores and just say, hey, change of plans. This is what's happening. So
I think so too. Like I said, I'll talk with the committee. But I think for the overall success of the event too, and it's something that they want to see grow, it's something that we want to see grow. I'm nervous to, not have anything in the streets.
Yeah.
So
can I add that as someone that spends a lot of time heating a tent in September, it's gonna be tough.
yeah.
that's what I'm really worried about, and then it's like, do you put another side on it and then it's all enclosed and then kind of what's the point? So there's a lot of things to keep in mind and think about it. And I'm also kind of worried if we put up 3 tents and then have them try and set up and then they ultimately can't play, then it's going to be little me taking down 3 tents and I can't do that. So we'll talk about it tomorrow at a committee, but it's just something that happened today. So
I would say that as a newer event too, I remember when we did the summer open house the first few years and we had the streets closed and it looked like nothing was going on and it looked like there was an accident, like something was wrong. It didn't necessarily promote there being an activity. So my cautiousness is all of those types of things. And if it's cold and we're still trying to build it up, like with the Halloween, there's still plenty of time to close streets once we get the event going.
And I did reach out to Traverse City because this the kind of idea that stemmed from this event was Traverse City's men's night, and they do not close the streets. And they actually said that because street closures are something that everyone agrees on. They said it's really tough in Traverse City as well. And the only time they actually close their streets in Traverse City is just for their sidewalk sales in August. So I thought that was interesting. But so yeah, a lot going on in my world. But we got one more Friday, and then and then we're good. And then it's Christmas. So cool. Thank you.
Any other opinions on closing the streets or men's night or any of our other events we've had lately?
I agree with everything that's been said and support.
And as much
Really
as
taking a look at that.
And as much as the committee has, I definitely want to value their opinions and all of their work on the event. It might come down to staff decision. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm very cautious and nervous about if the DJs can't be out because we definitely want to make it look successful too. And there's 40 businesses that have signed up to stay open late and stuff like that. So, but yeah, they've been a great committee and have been really, really, enthusiastic and, a great working committee too. So. Thank you.
I did have a clarifying question
Yes.
regarding the poker. Can you
Yes.
explain to us how that works so I can
Yes.
explain it to my
So-
staff too?
Yeah, and so that happened today with the DJ, and I was going to send out an email to all the participating businesses, but I didn't yet because if we're not closing, I wanted to kind of wait until I talked to them. So the poker run, it's really to encourage people to visit the stores. So I am supplying all of the participating stores with 2 cards of decks. They're also not just your regular red decks or whatever you get. They're different colors. So if someone is trying to scam us, we'll know. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But so I will supply all participating stores with 2 cards of decks and or 2 decks of cards. And then when someone comes in and they're participating in the event, you give them a playing card. The goal is for for the people to collect a hand of 5 cards. And then at the end of the night, they could obviously collect more than 5 cards, whatever. And then they choose their best hand of 5, and then at Malted Vinyl we will do a where you show your hand, and then the winning hand gets actually a $500 gift card to Meyer Ace Hardware, so keeping that money a little bit local too, hoping that, and then Ace Hardware is actually chipping in some additional prizes as well, so it'll actually be a prize valued at like $800. So does that kind of explain it a little bit better?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
cool, thank you. And it was done to really try and encourage people to visit more than one store. We are not able to get a raffle license, which is requiring a purchase to get something, which I would love to do because then it's actually not just someone coming in and eating your snacks and then leaving, But I've called the raffle people, and only nonprofits are allowed to get a raffle license. So
Thank you.
I'm just gonna say thanks to everyone for open house is just such a lovely event for the town, and it feels great, and could be another just sleepy day, but there's so much joy downtown. People are flocking to down. It's just an awesome event. So thank you all for making that happen. All the stores for staying open.
yes, thank you. I do appreciate that too. I mean, I know it's very expensive for you as stores to put it on. But it is just walking around and seeing, families, everyone. It's just it's such a nice, fun event. And it's really the one that you always hear about, which is really nice. So I appreciate for everyone too. I know it's a lot to put it on. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Sandy?
I don't think so.
All right. So just a couple of highlights, since we've made some changes with the permitting. Want to share last November 2023, there were 153 total permits purchased. This November, it was 193. So 40 more permits, which means people are parking and not having to worry about it. And it's awesome. The only other thing I wanted to talk about, highlight, was Park Mobile is going to be providing us with a refresh for all of our meters. Pretty little rainbow. It'll have a QR code that folks can scan. And one of the things that came up in the parking committee is, how do we protect the QR code from not being someone else putting their thing on there to scam folks? And so they showed us, it's a little emblem that is in the middle of the QR code that's really quick and easy to visually look at and make sure it's ours. So that's it. Otherwise, parking's been really quiet. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. But your report?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Let's-
Questions for parking? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. Report by city staff.
Hello. Yeah, go for it. You wanna do it? Sure. Was a great event happened last Friday. I don't know if any of you attended, but we honored Mike Robbins, Terry and Lillian, who all retired. The place was packed here with people having lunch with them and celebrating. It was amazing how many past employees came to celebrate with them. So it was obvious. Shane has produced a very positive staff here and a very gregarious, welcoming staff. Petoskey High School football team was here. There were 30 kids here. They introduced themselves. I stuttered through the reading of the names pretty badly. But we had the coaches were here. Head coach Webb, along with 5 or 6 of his other coaches, were here. They were all introduced, and a plaque was given to the team to take to hang in their trophy case, honoring their undefeated regular season and finishing 11-1. The Winter Sports Park, the big project for the pavilion with the ice chilled, is moving forward. It's probably a $4 million project, of which about 1.3 is already in the collection, and looking for more, but we are moving forward to that. The final budget with always wrap up the 2024, this last meeting's changes and additions and subtractions. We hired a merge consultant to work with us that will help with a possible merge proposal that we're looking at possibly doing this fall for the city, for all of the parks and rec area, trying to clean up the neighborhood parks, the amendment. Up here as well as back here, so people up at the podium will end up being on visual as well. Before. You're supposed to laugh about that. Oh, it's the wrong group. You're not the planning group, okay? Then I'm okay. That's about it for the city. How's that? Brian Wagner retired. Our city council representative has retired, and a new replacement will be appointed sometime in January. That's it.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy. Is it appropriate to ask where the gift certificates came from?
Sure. I went to every restaurant around the area that I could, that would give me $100 gift certificate.
Very nice.
They started with Duffy's, Fillmore's, some downtown said no. Cap 30 was a yes. There were 7 of them that said yes.
Wine guys. Julian, tomato, Northwoods, Southwoods, and me tequila.
Very nice.
Okay. We gave $100 gift certificate, so I presented it and taped it on everybody's door.
Love that.
Home, and
Lovely idea.
it's 3rd annual time. If you guys would like to participate next year, I will bring a sheet in for you to drive around. List 2 or 3 that you really like the most, circle the one you like the very most
All right.
on the 7 categories. I have on the bottom my cell number. You just take a picture and send it to me, and we tabulate it Sunday morning.
Wonderful.
So I will include you guys.
Awesome. Thank you. Sounds like fun.
I recommend 2 places that you go to see. One is go down to Standish Avenue by the old football field. Calcheck's on the left is spectacular. The other one is Caramel Drive.
Okay.
It's off of Lindell.
No.
And there are probably 4 or 5 houses that you could have given it to any of those, because they were all spectacular. So
Nice.
there's 2 addresses. Otherwise, go to the city website, and Sarah and Shane have got that up there where you can pull it right up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the mayor or our city manager?
I just add.
Please do.
One thing, our parks guys have been working hard, kind of dealing with warmer temperatures, trying to get the large ice rink in place. They actually worked around the clock last Thursday and Friday to prepare for this warm up that we had to try to get a base established, which they were able to do. So now after today, it looks like we're gonna have some colder weather, so we're planning on having the big rink open and available on Saturday, the 21st of December. And hopefully we will be able to keep it going. Which the mayor mentioned, the chiller system for the hockey rink area, that obviously will provide chilled ice. We really see that happening from likely fired up the week before Thanksgiving and then go until into April with a surface that is not dependent upon the weather. So we're excited about that. Having a structure over it, so we keep the snow off of it, we keep rain off of it. So those 2 things combined, the pavilion and the chiller, we think are a game changer going forward. So certainly appreciate city council's support. And my wife would be upset with me if I don't mention to you that Crooked Tree Art Center needs volunteers for their New Year's Eve event. So if you are interested, they have shifts that are broken up into, I think, 2-hour increments. But this is from 5 to 9 on, this is a family event. So 5 to 9, the ball is dropped at 9 o'clock. And again, you can go to Crooked Tree's website and sign up for many different opportunities to volunteer. So I've done my due diligence. One more thing, we do have an active call for public art out right now that goes until January 5th. So again, Crooked Tree is our consultant that's assisting us in this effort. The call has been open for about a month now, so we're coming up on the deadline again, which is January 5th. So you can go to their website, and this would be an art installation at our redeveloped Sunset Park. So if you know of anyone interested, you can steer them in that direction as well.
I was assuming with that call for entry that you're looking for like 3D art. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, this wouldn't be obviously a mural. This would be a sculpture or some other form of art, but likely a sculpture installation of some sort. So yeah, that's our next one. We're excited about it, that we've gotten very good feedback on the mural, and we're excited to see that continue. So. And just piggybacking on what Joe mentioned, as a newer resident of Petoskey, I have valued living here, but probably no other time than during the holiday season. It's such a beautiful community when the lights are on downtown and these events happen. And I mentioned this in my report last night. Just thanking Andy and staff and all of you for opening your businesses, but these things don't just happen. There's a lot of planning involved in these events. So kudos to you and to Amy and to everyone to put these things in place. It's a lot of effort, it's a lot of work, but you see the joy that brings to see families come downtown in our community and again, hopefully spend their dollars in your stores. So thank you for that. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Okay, let's move on to old business. So as a reminder, last month we talked about updates to the 2017 downtown sidewalk furnishings design guidelines and also the city code chapter 8 business licensing, article 7 food and beverage services to incorporate dining decks. And I know that we had a lot of questions. We also got a lot of great answers. Amy, I'm assuming that you might have something for us.
What I'll do is review a bit what we talked about last month, and I think the minutes were pretty clear. I think I had direction, but I just wanted to bring it back so that in a very clear motion format, we know what is moving ahead. So starting with the guidelines, the purpose of the guidelines is for furnishing place in the public right of way to provide a sidewalk design context or a design context for selection, placement, and use of sidewalk and dining deck furnishings in Petoskey's downtown historic district. Also to encourage awareness of the importance of design and portraying the image of downtown and individual businesses. This is the table in the guidelines. Again, it's looking at scale, style, materials, colors, placement, and maintenance of benches, planters, and dining furnishings, both on sidewalks and in dining decks, as well as barriers. Typically, barriers are only used when there is alcohol service provided. So the main change here from the 2017 document was adding the column for dining decks, because those did not exist at the time. And then the other recommendation of the committee was the scale of furnishings to be table height versus counter height or bar height. So other than that, there was not a lot of change to the design guidelines. What you had before you have been recommended by the Downtown Design Committee, and you are being asked to provide input and ultimately make a recommendation to City Council regarding these updated guidelines. And the agenda memo included also had some sample motions.
Do you have any comments on what Ian has presented? And Amy, I appreciate you coming out in several different methods, looking for people to come to make comments tonight if they had comments about dining decks and furnishings.
Right.
I did see that on Facebook and newsletter and things like that, so
Right.
thank you for requesting that people come and tell us their thoughts. Do you have any comments from the restaurateurs? Do you have any comments from the restaurateurs in the room?
No, I did, but now I am. No, I didn't.
He was being a helper. Mr. Keaty?
Yeah, I think, I guess reiterate what some of the points we talked about last time, or just that,
Please do.
I think it's really important that we do these to make this a permanent thing that people can make it make sense to invest in these decks. They're gonna cost a good amount of money and they're gonna be great, but if we're, setting this so everyone knows what they're getting into is really helpful. And then, reiterating, having with the discussion on one or the other of sidewalks versus decks. I think from the restaurateur standpoint, it doesn't really help. I think there's a great value in having both, because I don't know how many people are gonna do the parking space deck if they can't do the sidewalk one that they already can. Big things.
Thank you. So to refresh everybody's memory, currently we could do sidewalk or dining deck or both.
Current, well,
Right.
before this, like,
Right, but that's
What are
the
you-
ordinance, so we're jumping to the next agenda item.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we get there,
Yeah.
All right, we're just talking.
We're going to design. We're going to design.
It's just
Furnishings,
another-
you're just talking.
Gosh, heard that,
Okay.
heard that. We
See, even
we
with
knew
walking us
that.
down the road, we still can't make it.
We knew that.
We still-
Yeah.
Okay, questions or comments about downtown design guidelines? So
Oh,
that is right here, we're talking about guidelines for benches, outdoor dining furnishings, planters and barriers. And I see you've highlighted here in our table height, not counter or bar height. That's the major change in this. Is that correct? Plus the
Right,
addition.
this-
plus the dining deck edition.
Yeah.
This in this middle column, that last part, table height, not counter height or bar height. And then just this whole row was added, or column, sorry, for dining deck. Which pretty much mimics what was there before.
Excuse me, is the height, the table height, is that something is that related to safety or why? Just curious.
That was the discussion at the design committee of the scale, being in scale with the other streetscape furnishings, so the benches are all, you know, they're pedestrian height, you're not up above. So it was consistency with the streetscape furnishings, really.
I imagine there was also a discussion there about, I mean, those cabaret tables, if you will, tend to be kind of tippy. And sitting above, I think, sitting above that line of the railings,
Sure.
you know, it could be a safety issue as well.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I will point out that there is there are sample motions here that we could utilize.
I move that the DMB recommend to City Council the update to the 2017 Downtown Design Guidelines as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Albert, for making
Thank
the motion. Do I have support?
Support.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett. We have a motion and support. Any comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Thank you. Now we can go to draft dining deck ordinance.
Right. And again, the ordinance would be moving it to, it would still be a licensing process, but it wouldn't come back year after year to the DMB and to city council whether we wanted to allow dining decks. As long as they met the code and the licensing provisions, they could be allowed. And again, the purpose of having it in an ordinance is to establish requirements for outdoor dining and on sidewalks and dining decks that balances the use of the rights of way for pedestrian access, vehicle access and parking, streetscape elements and dining, because there's a whole lot going on in our streetscape. So we have to balance, you know, what is allowed where. And again, the starting point for this ordinance was the annually approved resolution. We discussed this at the November meeting. I just highlighted what some of those broad items were that were tweaked over the years. Every time it came back, there may have been something that happened the year before that people had issues with, so we changed it again. And it seemed like the direction of the board at the last meeting was to maintain the requirement that it's a full service restaurant with a minimum of 50% sales from food with wait service required. Business to be open a minimum of 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. The outdoor furnishings must follow the design guidelines. Installation is between May 15th and possibly through October 31st, but right now most people are taking them down before that. A maximum of 1 parking space could be used for a dining deck per storefront. And then the flooring of the deck, either stained wood or composite. And the railings must be constructed of wrought iron, aluminum, steel, or a cable system in black or Petoskey green. And then the deck must meet building permit, ADA compliance, and stormwater management. Allowing the water to pass under the deck. So those are all things that have been carried over. And then the Downtown Design Committee, in looking at the ordinance, also made the recommendation to limit the allowance to either sidewalk dining or dining decks and not allow both. And that is to, again, when we're looking at the balance of uses of the right of way, that they were looking at it from a perspective of maximizing pedestrian accessibility. And then also that dining deck should be limited to East Mitchell Street and East Lake Street, east of Pennsylvania Park. And in that they looked at the street scale and also the grade of the streets. As we discussed at the last meeting, hopefully this map's a little clearer than it was last month or in your packet. It just shows Lake Street is a 55-foot right of way, building face to building face. Howard Street's 60 feet, and then Mitchell Street is 77 feet. Which allows for more uses within that right of way. This doesn't talk about the grades, but we do know, some streets have more grade to them than others. So again, you started the review of this at the November meeting. And it seemed like the two recommendations of the main discussion was the two recommendations of the design committee and whether that should go into the ordinance or if it should be changed. What I took away was to allow both dining decks and sidewalk dining, not to limit to one or the other. And then there was a lot of discussion of should there be more, rather than limiting it to certain streets, have more objective criteria, like if the street in front of your business has more than X% grade, you don't get to do a dining deck, or a dining deck isn't allowed so many feet from a corner. Those would be things that we could put into the ordinance if that's what the management board thought we should do. So with that, I can pull up the draft ordinance if you wish.
Sounds great.
Could I ask a question
Of course.
while you're doing that? The dining decks that were in place last year, did those dining decks also have sidewalk decks?
Yes.
And how many of those decks did we have that way?
I believe that the TAP 30 pour dining decks also have sidewalk dining. And then when City Park had it last year, City Park only had sidewalk dining. But historically it's had both.
Sam's Grace had they just had sidewalk dining, Sam's Grace.
Can I ask an additional question while you're pulling it up?
Of course.
So does a business still submit every year for a permit to be able to operate their dining deck? Or is it just something they build it to these specifications and they're just able to, and they just pay the fee every year?
There would still be an annual license
That is assessed.
application, correct?
Okay. All right, cool.
And that's the same way it is with the sidewalk dining, even if you have the exact same setup, especially because you're maintaining, you're screwing the stuff into the sidewalk for that one, actually, they have to get it permitted every year. Pay every year.
Thanks for that clarification.
I just want to say, You know, and I guess I'm listening to Joe a little bit and, you know, I don't know if it's, a good business decision to do one or the other, or if both was the only way that he could go, with this, doing the sidewalk and the deck. You know, I'm kind of picking on you because you said that, you know, and I don't know if David would fall into that, category either, I guess. If that's something that they would just totally eliminate the whole thought process of it if they couldn't do both, are we gonna even have any dining decks? I mean, is this whole thing kind of null and void?
I mean, I guess my question, I don't wanna pick on Joe necessarily, but it's just.
Not necessarily, but.
I don't pick on you at all. I don't pick on you at all, because like the way that it's written is. As long as it can comply with ADA, and I just think the real fact is there's only certain places in the city that can allow for that. So to me, I think those types of restrictions make a little bit more sense than let's pick on particular streets. So like if we're trying to objectively allow businesses to make effective decisions on their own. So like if and we need them to maintain ADA requirements, as I mean, that's just a kind of a given in my opinion. So in order to have both a feasible like sidewalk dining area and a feasible parking area and still comply with that ADA compliance, there's only so many sidewalk like that possess that much like real estate to be able to cover. So like I just think that brings it more into like the objective lens of saying if somebody is looking at another storefront in town that they want to redevelop or make an investment in that space to, because like it's especially on the restaurant side of things, it's a major investment for anybody that wants to identify a new restaurant location as opposed to like a retail location. I'm not saying either aren't expensive. I'm just saying like from the physical plant standpoint, as we have economic enhancement brought into the city and that lens is brought to light, when they look at the summertime and they think, well, I only get this many seats in the off season, but then in the summer when there's this other vehicle that I can get additional seats, that's gonna help other people decide to select different storefronts in the city to redevelop. So I think from my interpretation, the objective is we're trying to help people make better decisions to have a better look for the city. Or also at some point, like there's existing restaurants that want to decide if they want to use this or not, but there's also new restaurants that could come into the city and decide if they want it or not too. So I think there's got to be a little bit of a give and take on that. So I think I'm pretty happy with the new language of, you know, objectively, it's okay for you to have both as long as you can comply. And I think that's an easier way for people to come to that conclusion, because if you don't have that, it's like, well, it kind of makes it fuzzy. And that's from when I was reading it before, is like you can either have sidewalk or you can have dining decks. Well, I mean, that's true as long as we're maintaining that ADA and there's both. I think we want that. I think we're okay with that. It is my interpretation.
That's exactly kind of what, let the ADA rule decide if that
Yeah.
can both happen.
Yeah.
Both can happen.
There, I didn't pick on you, Joe. I told you.
So does that, so what? I get that for having both sidewalk and dining deck. Are you thinking that ADA requirement also eliminates the need to restrict locations? So the part of saying they should be here or there, or you can't have one if you exceed X% grade, you're thinking just having, you must meet building code and ADA is sufficient?
I think so. Well, I don't even understand how it would work like you have to have it flush with the sidewalk.
Right.
And how does it even work on some of the grades? Like. What are you doing? I don't understand how you do that and have it set up for people to sit there.
Yeah, my reference is the distance of, we're still leaving that sidewalk open, not entry into the dining deck. I think that would be really tough.
But I'm just saying,
Like-
you got, just,
Yeah,
it's not like
grade is
this,
hard.
you gotta be flush with the sidewalk,
It's gonna be tough.
that's your floor, you're putting a. We'll just slide you your drink?
No, so my,
Yeah.
no, what I'm saying is like,
No, I'm with you on the,
Yeah.
on that, I'm just saying, I think that would. Like, I don't see the feasibility of, with the guidelines of having it be flush. And all these other things fitting in that space, how it would actually work in some places that I don't think we need to restrict. It's gonna take care of itself.
yeah, I'm not a building code expert by any stretch, so I don't know, but I just think it's outdoors. I think more what I liked was there's still gonna be passable sidewalk. Like in that interpretation, it's like for the distance for like shoppers and other pedestrians to be able to go down the sidewalk is what I was more concerned about. Could be wrong, but that's what I was more concerned about.
So Amy, a question for you. If we were to say that you have to meet ADA requirements, right? Which for Mr. Smith's point is to make sure that you can pass on the sidewalk, but to Mr. Keaty's point, will that eliminate certain grades, certain streets or parts of blocks from being able to build dining decks on the street because of the ADA requirement?
Likely it would.
Okay, so we could accomplish the same thing and yet not look like we're redlining certain parts of town, correct?
Yeah.
Great summary.
Okay.
For that.
Other comments? I'm sure that there are others in the room who would like to make a comment or question.
I would, sorry. I like the idea of the ADA version and not seeming like we're trying to micromanage who can do and who can't. I would say though that as having a husband for a builder, if somebody wants to figure out how to build and make it ADA on Lake Street, like if Duffy's wanted to do that, they could figure it out. So you have to be okay with they would do that. It probably would cost a lot of money. I don't know why they would, but you can make that work where you build it the right way.
Comments to that? Well, we cannot kick the proverbial football to January. We need to make a decision tonight because in fairness to our restaurant partners downtown, we need to give them plenty of opportunity to decide if this is in their budgets for 2025 and going forward. So we will discuss this tonight and we will come to a vote. So.
I gave you many options for.
Yes, you did. You did. So we're looking, Amy has given us on page 2 of this memorandum of the draft dining deck ordinances. At the bottom, there are several possible motions. We did talk about ADA requirements, and I would entertain one of these motions be made.
So just to be clear, the first motion, the resolution restrictions are saying you can do both.
Yes. In
For
the
the
current,
You could
in the
do,
resolution. The resolution language does not restrict it to one or the other.
great,
Okay.
and it doesn't restrict locations. That
Correct.
first motion is, that's
Correct.
what you're saying.
Yes.
That's what we would be saying with that one. Perfect.
Amy, why don't you step us through what those choices are?
Yeah.
How about that?
Step through.
Step us through those 4 motions. You've just explained the first
Okay.
one, but.
So the first motion would be essentially taking what the resolution language was historically and codifying it. I mean, there's some other details that go into ordinance language, but Essentially, it's just replicating the resolution language into ordinance format. The second one would say you can do outdoor dining, but you have to choose between sidewalk dining or a dining deck. The third one would be you would follow the current resolution, but you would also limit locations based on, and I just put a blank, so that was in the staff memo, I said you could come up with other objective standards, like you don't want them too close to a corner, you don't want them on a steep hill. That would be that one, and then the last one, you would be restricting it to one or the other and limiting locations based on if it's either what the recommendation of the design committee was Mitchell Street or East Lake, east of Pennsylvania Park, or restriction based on distances, dimensions. And you could just give some general parameters and we would just figure out a way to figure, I don't know what the
Specific
slope
languages.
is unreasonable, but I'm sure engineer does. So we would, if that is something that you think should be in the very specific in the ordinance, then that's where that one would go.
I think it's kicking it back to the retailers because they kicked it to us restaurant folks. I think it's worth discussion for a brief moment before we adopt any one of these lovely sample motions. That I think you're right, Becky. I think somebody, if they really want to, can engineer if we're not going to restrict it by location. And I think that it's okay, but I do think it's something that we should discuss is if we think that there's certain parts of town where these wouldn't be appropriate, I think it's something that's worth discussing. I think it's okay. I think if somebody's going to take the effort to identify a space, then we should allow the process to work. But that's more of a retailer opinion, not somebody that's in my shoes. So is that something that needs more clarification? Is that something that needs more discussion or consideration?
Excuse me.
Up their defense.
Excuse me.
When they were blowing out Jacksonville.
Excuse me. I can't shut it off. Just came to the.
That's one way to clear our mind. That's good.
And this gets to, I think, I brought it up as a November meeting is, and it wasn't really the design committee's purview to look at the economic side of it. But there is the balance of downtown. We have a very strong retail core that a lot of communities are envious of. Do we want to encourage the maintain that as a retail core, or having more dining options in between the retailers? Is that equally beneficial? I think there was the discussion of the value of a parking space to a retailer and the in and out traffic versus having, and this is why in previous discussions of the resolution, we limit it to certain hours, because if you have a dining deck that's taking a parking space and nobody's using it, what is the point of it? So just, that was the other. There's the design aspect, and then there's the value of on-street parking to a commercial core.
If nobody's thoughts, then we can just
I had
throw some motions out.
Can
I
you,
don't know.
one thought would be, can we do something that in the motion where it said something that only 2 outdoor seating areas per street,
You could.
so that you're not, because I don't necessarily enjoy losing parking spaces as well, especially on the street. Those are prime spots for a lot of places, you know, on Lake Street, but I also personally don't feel right telling a restaurant that's there that they can't do it when, if they chose to be someplace else, they could. But at this point, I guess like grandfathered in or something. Does that make sense? That makes sense. Kinda. But if you had too many, if you all of a sudden had a row of restaurants, you wouldn't want that either. So there is something to be said for making sure that there's not 50 on one street.
Right, or even
Or one on each side.
Right, yeah.
You don't want to-
But it is the way it's written, for it to make financial viability, it needs to be done right, it needs to be done well, it's an investment, and so it's not totally a burden. I think we're towing the line well.
Yeah.
I think your planning standpoint is like a really good way to approach it, of like, is there a certain quantity that we're comfortable with, or some sort of balance there? Because there's a balance on the restaurant side of like an investment in staffing it. I mean, to hit those hours from a staffing standpoint can be a challenge for certain, especially like newer restaurants as they're developing. Some of the ones with a heavier foothold are able to staff a little bit. I don't even want to say staff easier, but it's just when a new restaurant opens, that is a major like investment to say like, yes, I'm gonna stay open for these like times. So I think there are mechanisms that are in it as it's written that kind of accomplish that, but I do think it's worth a little bit of discussion. So thanks for the planning statement of like, maybe we only want a few per street or a few per side of street, or I don't know what that looks like.
I
Those
think
are all good points.
You could always try limiting how many you have on a street and see how it works for the first year or two. And you can always go back to drawing board. It's hard to put it back into the
Right.
can once you get it out and you end up going, oh my gosh, we've got too many. So
Sorry, Mr.
go slow.
Mhm.
And I think you'll be happier in the long run doing that.
Yeah, I just want to, the way that the city went about it for like short-term rentals seemed to be that approach, and I think that was the right approach.
I would, I guess. Then that begs the question of like, how do you decide? Which two, if there are 3 restaurants on a block? And then I don't know, how do you decide that? And then the whole question of investing in them is like, you're back to that. It's like, well, I'm not gonna do it, but we're gonna draw a name out of the hat this year, see who gets it. I don't know. You're gonna, I think, I would also say, I think they're good things to talk about. I think our good friend, Mr. Market, the marketplace is going to say there's no way we would have that many restaurants and the town still be a viable town, right? Like it's not an easy town to operate in, right? And the fact that we're gonna have them all there, it seems unlikely.
Could you just say like pre-existing gets the first, bid on them? Like right now there aren't more than 2, I don't think, on a street, decks anyway. I mean, would that,
You could do that. You could do it.
like they're grandfathered in, right? Is that kind of?
Well, I don't think you wanna do grandfathered in,
No.
or that's too much, that's too lenient for
First
me.
come, first.
Well, I mean, they already have the decks.
Right, but I'm saying,
Yeah, first come, first served. And then have the limitations set.
I guess to totally steal from the city's ordinance on short-term rentals, is it like a certain number that we want in the city as a whole as opposed to per street? Because then you get a number of permits per year, it can come back to the board, like it can go back to the city where you can reestablish what that quantity is. And then that just seemed to be the mechanism that they were able to verify, like who submitted. And it just made it a little bit easier, but you know, we could say we're allocating, like, this is just an example. You could say you're allocating 5 permits per year, first come, first served, and then if you get, you know, 6 the next year, you get to establish if you want to grow that number or shrink that number. But it more slow rolls what that looks like as opposed to, because I to Joe's point too, like if somebody's eyeing up a spot that's in downtown and they want to open a restaurant and they want to invest in it, but there's not enough permits, like if we're totally saying we're never going to add more, or we're only going to allow 2 per street, but I know that these 2 restaurants already have the permit for that, like, but it would make sense to add a 3rd, like, would a total quantity for the city make more sense, I guess is just the question.
Doesn't that kind of follow suit with that liquor license too?
There's a limit on the
Yeah.
redevelopment licenses. I
Yeah.
think council approved up to 10.
Yeah,
But you can also go back to city council and ask for more.
right.
It's kind of like.
I mean, I don't know if that kind of is the same idea.
Right.
Like Drew said, with the short-term rentals, we decided how many are out there right now. And we knew there were like 33 or something like this. Well, we'll do 40 as our max. And we'll have some buffer there. But yet if you have had it, you can continue to use it. Because you've invested into it.
That was a good approach. I did
It
like for that.
That's worked well.
I thought it was a very good approach. I'm not necessarily saying they need to be parallel, but I thought that was a good example that.
But something like that, you
Yeah.
guys could come up with something that would work for you guys downtown. I think.
Yeah.
So we've currently never had more than 3.
Right.
We know there have been maybe a couple businesses that have considered it or asked about it.
What, wasn't there 4 1 year?
Hmm?
There was 4 for a short period.
Gypsy vodka.
Do we limit it? Do we start a limitation of 5 or 6? Within the downtown?
I'll try. Are we ready for a motion? Cause I'll throw a motion. if you
Yeah,
want.
I think so.
I'm ready.
Alright. Could be dangerous. Let me think for a minute.
Sure, she wrote them out.
I know, but like. Where did she write it out that says cabinet fixed?
You just add it to the,
Add.
just add it to the first one and say limit it to 6 per year.
There you go.
I don't want that one.
Based on
That's
a maximum
location.
of-
In addition to limiting the total number of decks downtown. Just add that to right to the.
All right,
to the first.
I will make them, I move that the DMB recommend to city council the approval of an ordinance to allow dining decks with the current resolution restrictions in addition to the language specifying ADA requirement and with a first annual cap of 5 dining deck permits for the central business district
2025.
for 2025. Thank you, Mayor. What else did I miss?
Nice. Thank you. Check the box.
So point of clarification on that, if he says that with a maximum of 5 for 2025, does that mean in 2026 it's uncapped?
No,
Do we have to clarify?
Maybe just say a limit of 5. And that'll just continue until
Until we change it.
it gets changed.
I would like to modify my motion to be a limit of 5.
So we have a motion.
Somebody else could have done it. I don't know.
Yeah.
We have a motion
You said what we're all thinking.
to recommend to city council the approval of an ordinance to allow dining decks downtown with the current resolution restrictions. In addition to requiring that they meet ADA requirements for both sidewalk and street structures. And that we have no more than 5 permits allowed.
Yeah.
Does that sound reasonable?
Sounds-
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have support?
I will support that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and support. Any comments or questions?
Do we need to put anything about who gets the 5? Or how we're deciding who get, if there are 6 applications,
First come, first served, probably said.
what language? Do we need to decide that, or can that?
Can that be first
I
choice?
want to say priority given to previously installed decks.
Okay, so I will modify my motion to include language that gives priority to pre-existing businesses that have operated a dining deck. And first come, first served thereafter.
You say you're okay with it.
And I.
You'll support that as well?
Support that.
Okay. Thank you for the amended motion, Mr. Smith, and the amended support, Ms. Bennett. Any comments? Questions, concerns? We will do a roll call vote. Ms. Tweeten?
Keating,
Aye.
Murphy,
Yay.
Albert,
Aye.
Bennett,
Aye.
Shorter,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Jaconet,
Aye.
and Philip Krennic.
Aye. Fabulous. Thank you. We have a unanimous motion there. Go forth and figure out what we just said. That's great. It was done. Right, exactly. We're all good.
I don't think we can entertain.
Thank you all.
We do have someone from the public that would just like to say something really quick.
Sure, please. Hello.
She's muted.
I keep trying to get her to unmute, but go ahead, Becky.
Unmute Becky.
Call me.
I know, that's what I was gonna call her.
All right, maybe not. She just wanted to say Merry Christmas.
Oh. Merry Christmas, Becky. All right. Okay, so we have covered old business. Anything else? Okay, I make a motion for adjournment. Thank you, adjourned.
Batteries this way.
All right.